Good morning, everyone, and welcome to episode 5, where we are talking about the CEO mindset. And the most important thought I want you to carry through our conversation today is that your current circumstances don't determine your success. Your thinking does. And you need to know that you can control that thinking and create the future you want. So, we have a great quote that we want to land this idea with. It's by Napoleon Hill, and he says an educated person is not necessarily one who has an abundance of general or specialized knowledge. An educated person is one who has so developed the faculties of their mind that they may acquire anything that they want or its equivalent without violating the rights of others. And that tells us that these mental muscles, these faculties of our mind are so important. There are 6 of them, and they're like mental muscles that we must grow and develop like any muscle in our lives. So today we are landing the 6 mental muscles, the 6 mental faculties, how you can use them, and how to use that power and that energy we all have inside of us to create our futures and go for those goals.
Yes,
Good
very
morning,
exciting. And
Francis.
this is one of we call this lesson thinking into results. That's a program we do, and this one's called thinking into results. So it's really learning about the trick of staying in charge no matter what the circumstances, like you said. And that's so cool because I don't think that I mean I've never been told at school how to use my mental faculties. And when you really think about it, these 6 mental faculties, the more we strengthen them, the better results we have in our lives. So because one thing that we want to share also is that most people, they're not necessarily living in the right way. They're living from the outside in. So what's happening is that they have the results and they look at the results, they don't like the results, and because of that they have certain thoughts, and that usually could be negative. So you can think about love, business results of the revenue or expenses, name it, everything. You're looking at the outside and that makes you think in a certain way. And the fact is that we've been trained this way. You look at schooling system, you're gonna have the grade, and then if you have A, you're a good student. It makes you even as an identity who you are. So now it goes very deep in our subconscious, which creates a whole different type of paradigm. And after we have our thoughts, we start to feel in a certain way, and depending on how we feel, we have some actions. And I'm sure you've heard many times, "Oh, I don't feel like it." Automatically, if we know that somebody says, and we mentioned that in a previous episode, if you don't feel like it, it's not even you. It's most probably a paradigm, and you're actually letting something outside of you dictate how to create. And so really the best way that we want to teach you today with these mental faculties are a way to live from the inside out. So that means that no matter what circumstances are happening in your life, you're gonna create these thoughts, even if it looks yucky on the outside. If the sales are low, or the P&L, the profit are low, you don't let that dictate who you are or the decisions you're going to make. You're going to have thoughts that are creating feelings, actions, and results. So I'm curious about what you think about that.
Yeah, it's so powerful what you just said, because I think that idea of living from the inside out is so important. And it's actually really hard, right? Like, it's a simple concept to hear, but just thinking about, if you don't feel like it, or if you got bad news or a bad result, that so easily affects how we think and how, like, our whole day unfolds, or how everything unfolds, how we move forward. People often talk about, kids at school. If, some people have decided that they aren't good at math, like, their parents have always said, "Oh, it's a really hard subject. Don't worry. Like, it's really difficult. Don't bother." If you don't try, then you go in with the attitude of, "I can't do this anyway, so I don't need to try." Then you get a bad grade, and then you go, "Oh, well, I've proved myself right. So I'm just going to keep not bothering and not trying harder because I've basically already given up." And I think that's something we go through really early in our lives. And that then perpetuates, right? You go into business and you have a bad result the first time. You go, "Oh, maybe I'm not a good business person. Maybe I'm not a good salesperson. Maybe I'm not a good leader." But all of these things can be learned, right? And I think that idea of the results are what they are. And sure, I think it's important to take lessons out of them, but that mustn't dictate how you move forward. As I said earlier, like your current circumstances don't dictate your success. You must challenge yourself to think differently. What do I want? Go back to our first conversation about goals. What do I want? What do I need to do to get there? And who do I need to be? And how do I need to act and behave to get there? Once we work from that, like creation that we create within our minds, that's when we know what steps we need to take. I remember someone said to me once that, like, you have no obligation to be the person you were 5 minutes ago. It was one of my early
Wow.
mentors. And I was like, what an amazing thing to say. Because I think often we go, people expect Elise to do this, or they expect me to do that, or you've kind of created a persona in your life or with loved ones or family. And do you know what? Maybe today you just don't feel like being that person anymore. If you've always been, I don't know, the person who sleeps in and presses snooze, maybe today I'm showing up for myself and getting out of bed and going for a walk. And for me, it was such an empowering thought that I have no obligation actually to anyone except for myself to be who I want to be, which is actually so empowering and it's really exciting.
Oh, I love that quote, because what I like in that quote is the no obligation, which means that, when we live in a world of survival, there's a lot of things that we do out of guilt or out of shame, and they're not great emotions. Actually, they're kind of destroying the real potential that we have. So when you say there's no obligation, there's really nobody's asking you to do anything. You have no obligation, which means that if you don't have no obligation, you have the choice to make. And I like to tell my clients, when they say, "Oh, I have to do this," I'm like, "No, no, no, no! Don't even use that in your vocabulary. Just you choose, or you get to do something. You don't need to do something. Yes, even if someone says, you got to come to the appointment, well, you don't need to. You definitely don't need to. If you choose not to go, you're just going to deal with the consequence. But you don't need to. So there's no obligation, and it's a choice. And I really love this quote. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And before
Great.
we
So
go to the six mental faculties, I know that you personally love golf, and we were talking about this week, and I think that there's a story you can tell which shows exactly how a man had such a strong mental faculty to. I will let you tell the story.
Yeah, so I'm sure many of you watched the US Open this weekend. And so my family moved from South Africa to Pittsburgh in the US about 2 years ago now. And I always used to watch these major tournaments on TV. And then I realized that this huge tournament is like less than an hour's drive from my house. So I was like, I have to go and watch this in real life. I mean, there's something special about attending these big like sports events in person, right? Like the energy, and it's amazing just to see. And golf for me has always been such an incredible, like a mindset and test of the mind. You have a bad shot and you need to recover. You need to go, I may not be like in the best place, but I'm going to do as well as I can, right? You can't actually give up. You need to finish the hole. So we were watching, and this was the final day, and like there were a whole bunch of guys that were really close. And so JJ Spawn was one of the top guys, and he's ranked in like the top, I think, 30 of the golfers. So he's not like ranked number one right now. And he kind of came out of nowhere, right? He had a great first round, and he was like in the running towards the last day. We had a couple of rain delays during the week. So it's been like really tough environment and playing situation. And on the last day, he came out, and his first few holes were horrible. It was just like, he was over par, and he wasn't doing well, and it was just like it really looked like it wasn't going his way. And then the next thing, it started raining, and there was a rain delay. And then you always think, wow, like how are these guys? Like, what are they going through in their mind? How are you recovering from this? Like, you probably do so much work to get in the zone when you start. And now what, right? And I always think it's so interesting to see, like, how are they using their mind in that time? Because that break, I mean, that's actually such a big decision of like, how am I responding to the situation? How am I reacting? How am I getting frustrated? Am I using it to refocus my mind? So he came out, and it was absolutely incredible to see how he came out. So there was one other player who just everything started going wrong. It was like he was in the rough and then he was in the bunker and he was like throwing his clubs and he was getting really frustrated. And I remember saying to my husband, like, I really hope he pulls this thing together, or his caddy has some like magic, advice to give him because he needs to pull it together.
I need to
And
be his
JJ
coach.
Spawn, exactly. I was like, someone needs to help him. It's going wrong. And yeah, phone your coach. Someone must text him and like break this thinking pattern. And JJ Spawn just came out, and it was such an incredible thing to see how this guy could just focus. So he had a really bad start to his round. He could easily have said, this moment is too big, right? It was such a big like place for him to be. It's this major tournament. And his last two holes were absolutely something to behold. So he had this incredible birdie on the second to last hole, and he was like tie for the lead. And everyone's like, oh my goodness, is this guy actually going to pull it through? And on the last hole, he has a really good start, and there's this like, I think it was a 65-foot putt right at the end, and everyone's like, like it's really tough and it's like such a big moment. And there's all these people and cameras around him. What will happen? And you can see him just kind of focusing and just like trying to exclude everything around him. And he sinks the putt. He sinks this incredible putt, and everyone's like, there is no way. Like, it's just, that was so exciting to see. And for me, it was such a great example of how like your mindset is like the determining factor of your success. Hey, that other guy was a really good example of getting frustrated, getting upset, getting everything, like you could just imagine what was going on in his mind about the frustration, everything going wrong. And JJ Spawn easily could have had a similar situation. His day didn't start well. I don't know what magic happened during that break, but he came back, he was calm, he was confident, he like just took everything in his stride. Nothing looked like a big deal. It was just like, I'm going to do this thing. And look, everyone was like, what just happened when that putt sank? But it was so incredible to see how he just kept it together, kept focused. He actually almost did the impossible, right? And he
Yeah.
completely turned it around. And, what a great example of how the mind worked for him on that moment.
And I'm so glad that you shared that with me, because then I went online and I looked at that 64-foot putt, and the level of energy gave me goosebumps. You hear the crowd cheering. It's I had chills, and they show it from different angles. It's so beautiful, and there's so many parallels to do with that. I'm thinking about other sports, and even in business. You have tennis. Tennis is also another one. You can be leading or you can be behind, and then the mental is really gonna help you to win or lose. And they say the difference, or the one that what differentiate the best from the rest, is really the mindset. And I think that's a quote from I'm trying to remember. That's someone from my country, Andreescu. Anyway, so she was winning at one point. She even was winning against the Williams. So it's incredible to see how we can apply that to the business. I'm thinking in sales, you can have a bad conversation with your manager, or you can be a manager and have a bad conversation with your colleague, and then you go into a call. Do you bring that with you? Or can you just maintain composure, put that behind, it's the past anyway, and really focus on the right thing? And to have that mental agility, to have this emotional intelligence is so important for business, relationships, everything that we do. So how about we're going to start to introduce you guys the 6 intellectual faculties that we know could really influence your results. So let me just show my screen 2 seconds.
So I think when people think about things, so often if you were talking about living from the outside in, we think about our 5 senses, right? Like see, hear, taste, touch, smell. And I think so often that affects everything in our thinking, right? You see like a negative thing, or you hear something you don't like, or, there's so many things that come into us. I mean, I heard something about there's so many inputs that come to us, like every second, right? Like over a million or something. And we can only actually process a few thousand. So our mind is
It's
actually like organizing things exactly such a tiny piece of the total inputs around us. And I think that talks to many of these intellectual faculties. So I'll let you take us through them.
Yeah, and you know what? When you say that, what's interesting is, so if you really think, thank you for bringing that up, because if we are just getting that much of all the input that's available, that means that the reality, we mentioned that already before, the reality of what's around is so much bigger than what we see, hear, taste, and smell. Like this is, so the fraction is, and all of that is influenced by our subconscious mind, which we already said, this is 95% of everything that we do. So this is our paradigm. It's almost like from a point on, we decided that this is what we see, and we're going to live from that. And that's how we're going to create our world. But there's so much more information that's available. So talking about one, I love this one, perception. How many fights have we had with people, and it was just a matter of different perception, different perspective, different angles. And I think that even if we're looking at, I've heard for some of the car accident scenes, people have even a hard time to recollect some of the details, and they could even miss the color. So, and if you're from a different angle, you can imagine what would happen. So a great example that I think our mentor would say is, he's got this book, and I'm trying to find one right now, but imagine that this is, let's pick this one. I'm just randomly picking it, but this is a case, right? And so I could say, Elise, do you see something written on that? And you're going to say, no, I see absolutely. And then I say, what are you talking about? This is not true. There is something that's written on that case, or a picture. Yep. And then I would be right. So the fact that I'm right doesn't make you wrong, and the fact that you're right doesn't make me wrong either. So we just have a difference of perception. So now if we're going back to business and the leaders, maybe when we exchange some ideas, there's just a matter of perception, and we need to be open-minded to listen from a different angle and see where they're coming from, and at least have this awareness of being open-minded.
Yeah, that is such a good one. And I also love perception, because I think it's something we deal with like every day on so many levels. And, I think having the awareness that your perception is created by your habits and your beliefs and that programming that you have in your life, and understanding what that paradigm is. So at least you're aware of what you tend to, how that lens looks for you, right? And it's with that awareness that at least you can go, look, I tend to see things this way, but let me try and see your side. Let me try and understand why you think this, or why you think that's an opportunity. And that's such a powerful thing, is when you can realize that, look, I do tend to default in a certain way. However, it is so valuable seeing other people's perspectives. As you say, the case, or, with the writing or without, they both are correct. And it just shows you that, there is no black and white, right or wrong. It's what is the opposite, and how can I use that to my advantage, and how can I realize that there is so much more out there. So, being aware of all of these other perspectives makes it so much richer, and makes your experience richer, right? Just knowing how other people experience life.
Yeah, and one perception that is so important to work on, and we will talk about it in the next episode, is self-image. So the perception of ourself. So we have an outside image, and we have the perception that we have about ourselves, and the way that we see ourselves dictates a lot of our behaviors. If I don't see myself as a confident person, I might not even talk to some of the people that I know deep down I should talk to. And I know also you have a great example in your own current life lately of someone that had different perception of himself, and by switching or shifting that, it created new results.
Yeah. So this is a client I'm working with, and so he's a third generation business owner, and he took over this business from his grandfather and then his dad, and it's like a very technical business, and he doesn't have that skill set. So he came in, and you talk about self-image, and he was like, am I the right person? I don't have the skill set. But But, I always believe that the CEO doesn't have to be the technical specialist. You must surround yourself with the right people and know what you bring to the table. No one can do everything, right? So you must understand your strengths and your opportunities, and then fill in for those weaknesses and have a great team around you. So those are things we've been speaking about for a long time. And he had one of his general managers in the team that was very senior and had a lot of experience in this industry that they work in. And my client was so excited about taking over this business because he had really big dreams, right? So we were setting these amazing goals, and the business had kind of been a little bit stagnant for a while. So he was like, I want to grow it and I want to expand our product offering, and doing really intentional work with him and his team. And I said to him, look, there was always this worry about this general manager not supporting him. And I said, look, I think it's okay to try and help and get people along with you. But I said, you can make that effort and try and get him to align with you. But if he's not going to align, he will always be a block. And I think it's an important lesson for all of us, right? We need everyone to row in the same direction. Because if there's someone's energy that is against the plan and doesn't want to participate and is always negative, it's going to bring down everyone else, right? So we've been a little bit worried about him, and his mastermind group was always also saying, look, we're concerned about this guy. And one day we asked the question and we said, what if he leaves? And he was like, Elise, I can't deal with that right now. I don't have the skill set, and what am I going to do? And so after some time, he gets back to the office last week sometime, and he gets this email saying, this guy is leaving and he's taking 7 of the other people with him. And he was
big shift,
big change. He was what now, right? The worst thing that he was so worried about happened. He phones me. He's like, it happened. We spoke about it and it happened. And I just said to him, I know it's scary right now, but let's just think about what are the good and what are the bad, right? Every situation has an opportunity in it. So I acknowledge that it's very scary and you've lost some skills. What is the opposite of that? What is the opportunity in this? And at first he was like, you're always trying to be positive. I don't feel like thinking about this right now. I was like, that's fine. But what does this mean? Is there budget available to get new people? Is this an opportunity to get incredible people that have energy and drive and the vision that you have? What are all those opportunities? Now you have headcount available to start this new product line. And as we were speaking, he was like, okay, I'm going to take a day or so just to kind of process what happened. And within a couple of days, he had found this incredible new general manager who, since I actually spoke to you, has accepted the position and has already started influencing the team. He officially starts in 2 weeks. He's already started reaching out to the rest of the team. He has great ideas. He's fully on board, and he is 100% aligned. And I actually spoke to him yesterday, my client, and he was like, this is actually the best thing that ever happened, right? It was so scary at the time, but it happened for the right reasons. And you and I often say things don't happen to you, they happen for you. And this is such a great example of that, right? It seems really scary and it seems horrible at the time, but it just creates this amazing opportunity to get the right people around him. And I know they're going to do incredible things going forward.
That's such a great story. And now and those great questions you ask him. What if we actually go on the opposite and ask ourselves, how could this be a good thing? And in my coaching, I do the same. At one point, we're like, now what? We cannot change that. Now that we know this, how can you create from that? All life is material. And another thing that I always say, all events are neutral, really. I mean, at the end of the day, they're all neutral. It's the fact that we say it's good or bad is just based on our perception. From someone that would be, oh, you lost your job. You're so lucky. You can do anything you want. Great. And another person, oh, I just lost my paycheck and now I don't feel secure. And that's instead of also thinking that, oh, I can actually now focus on what I really love. And how many of us have made the switch from, we don't know what we don't know sometimes. We go from one company to another and we realize, wow, I was missing so much of the goods that I was not even aware of. And so perception is such a great tool. That's one of my favorite because we can always, And actually, Bob, I know Bob has a great exercise is to put the problem on the middle of the table and kind of sit in different chairs to see how can I see this problem from different angles. And just the fact that you physically do that, I think helps us to see, oh, I can see this issue as maybe an opportunity, or I can see that maybe there's a lesson underneath that I needed to learn in order to grow. It reminds me of one of my clients, something just kind of the same thing, like path. Everything changed. The suppliers can do it. Now he had to find a new solution, and he realized that he was actually not even optimized or efficient in the way that it was dealing with his suppliers. And so now he had to change that. And after that, he was able to take it from a different level. So, and he's a great example to say, good or bad, is this good or is this bad? I'm going to choose that this is good. So that's perception, definitely a great one. Reason, I think, the fact that we say thinking into results, I think it's just a way of saying I have the capacity to think. And my thinking has an influence on my results. So what type of thinking am I involved now in? And what am I emotionally involved with? So using our mind to reason in a different way. And maybe the way I interpret it is putting the feelings aside for a moment and just kind of look at it objectively. Think about it. Don't be emotionally involved with it, but just really think about it. Another one, and we looked at memory for the example of the golfer, right? You could remember all the bad shots that he had in the past, and I remember you even told me he didn't have a really good straight win in the rain. But now imagine it's raining. He had 5 bad shots. It rained, and the last time it rained, it didn't do good. So you had to really kind of forget. Using your memory to don't remember those things, don't put it into your subconscious mind, and choose with your different thoughts. And before I ask you a little bit about your opinion on all this, I want to introduce the will, because the will is so important. This is not the motivation. It's the will is the exclusion of all things that are around you and really focus on one thing. And I think your example was a great way of, I'm going to focus on what I know I'm doing good. I'm going to focus on the right thoughts. And I'm going to create something new. So I'm not going to remember. And you can use actually memory in good ways. You can remember wins that could help you to feel really empowered and have some gratitude about the things that you've done in the past. And so all of these, like we're starting to see that these intellectual faculties are so powerful, especially when they're mixed together. Another good way that we can take a look at memory, it's been said by How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie, names are the best, sweetest melody to everyone's ear. So remembering names, you can have an impact just if you're interfacing with customers all day long. If you remember their names and every time you introduce yourself, oh, that's nice meeting you, Elise. How can I help you? Just that alone, remembering, can have a big impact on your business.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think these are all, as we said earlier, like they're mental muscles that we need to practice. And the reason I often also think you were explaining it as thinking. And I remember Bob has a quote where he said, if you listen to people speaking, it'll seem like many people aren't actually thinking, So, it's almost like, am I making sense of things myself? Am I just taking everything verbatim about what everyone around me thinks and says? And I think that reminds me so much of the paradigm and how we were programmed, right? Like as little kids, we couldn't kind of go, I choose to believe this or not. It was just kind of coming into our subconscious mind. And now let me reason for myself and choose what I want to believe. As memory, as you said, like, so many people go, oh, I'm bad at remembering numbers, or I'm bad at remembering names. Like, if you've chosen that you're bad at it, then you will be bad at it, right? So make the effort, have a connotation, have a clever way of remembering someone's name. And again, like the more you do it, the more you will like excel at it. And focus, as you say, I think so many of us, we easily get distracted by so many different things. It's like, the shiny object syndrome. And I think it's so important to have the will of focus. And, people use mindfulness practices or meditation or, various techniques to teach their mind to focus. And I think that's such a good thing because you need to be able to, focus on that goal know that it won't happen on day one. But if you stay focused on it, the how will come to you, because we know that our minds look for what we want, right? We spoke about all the inputs we get every day. Your mind will go looking for evidence for what you believe. So if you know that you want to get to this goal, your mind will then select the information you need for that to become a reality.
Yeah, and I see that, Will, for me, I can relate in my own experience that how many of us would sometimes dwell on something or cling on something. We're actually using our will to in a detrimental way. And so I used to I tell my clients, imagine that this is a battery of energy, and this is all you have during the day that you're going to use for your energy. So where in that, and you can focus on the wrong things and you dwell on the wrong things, how much of that energy are you using and focusing on during the day? And I ask them a percentage, and sometimes they come up with like, well, I've been thinking about that 60% of the time. So it's an energy leak. And this is an energy that you can use for creation. So by focusing on a wrong thing or dwelling, being in that space, it's like if you see it as a leak and as something that's consumed, then there's not much left for creation and really focusing on the right things. And that could be, oh, my sales are bad, the revenues are down, again, at the outside, and what am I going to do now? Starting to be more in survival mode as opposed to be in abundance mindset or growth mindset, and say, okay, this is the past. How can I reason? How can I come up with new ideas? Which leads now to the other one, imagination. How can we use our imagination and think about ways where we can actually grow the business? And our language is very important. Bob would say, don't think about getting out of debt. Think about abundance. So, and there's a great exercise that we give to our clients, which is called 333, a story of a person that because wanted to help some of the residents in a place in Ontario, Canada, after a hurricane. They said, we want to help raise $3 million. We have 3 hours to come up with the solution, and it needs to be implemented in 3 days. And the exercise was, I don't want to hear about anything of the reasons we can't. I just want to hear everything. Like, let's do a little chart. On one side, the reasons why we can't. The other one, the reason why we cannot. I don't want to hear all these reasons. Let's focus on the reasons we can. And the exercise made it happen. It looked impossible in the beginning, and they raised $3 million in just a short session of 3 hours and implemented in 3 days. And so they really came up with great ideas with their imagination.
And like, I love the imagination, because it's a whole kind of creative, like your creative faculties and how you think of great new ideas. And that 333 example is fantastic, because I can bet you when he started that exercise with his team, they were all like, there is no way we're going to get 3 million in 3 hours. Like, no, thank you. And I think often when we go through these kind of phases of wanting to brainstorm and be creative and creating, even like creating your goal is actually a really creative process, right? It's all about imagination. You are creating this future that you want. And so often when you start with it, you kind of start really small, right? You're like, oh, I'd like this to happen or whatever. And, often with ideas, when you're trying to solve a problem, you start off and it's kind of like, it's going slowly and you kind of come up with basic ideas. And as you carry on, you get get more courageous, you get more creative, and like if things get really big and they seem really silly at the time, but you can actually really make it happen, right? And then often you look back going, oh, I was kind of joking when I said that, but we just made it happen. And I'm sure that's what that team was thinking. And I think, again, that talks about the power of having like-minded people in your life. If you, like the client I spoke earlier, if you have the right people around you, you can actually do anything, right? Everyone's got different skill sets, everyone's got different things to contribute, and you build on top of each other. Someone may be really good at coming up with an idea, someone else may be good at implementing and executing, and that's when you kind of leverage each other's strengths, and that's what creates this kind of exponential thinking and exponential growth, right? Like, if you only think about you and your skill set, there's limitations. But if you surround yourself with the right people that are additive to you, like, the sky's the limit.
Absolutely. And the last one is intuition. And I've heard or read lately that is one of the skills that is predicted to be one of the most important skills for the future, especially by humans and not AI, right? And so I remember years ago, I think it was 2018 or 19, I went to an intuition course by Mind Valley, and it's incredible to see what we are capable of just by using our intuition. And again, that's a muscle. We were basically tuning into different types of colors and metal and smells to kind of fine tune our senses, and then we would kind of try to imagine like what would the person would put in their hand. And after 3 days, it was incredible because for me, I took one of my ring and I just put it in my hand, and the person had to guess what it was and describe what it was. And the ring was bought in Italy, but the reason why I bought this ring in Italy is because I had one that I bought in Bali, and that was very, very similar. And the person was describing everything about Bali. And so I thought, wow, this is like way like the ocean, an island. They were describing Bali, so in a way, it was hitting the target because like my emotion, what they were feeling, is that I bought this ring because I lost the one that was from Bali, and I wanted to find another one, and it was exactly the same. And it was just so to know that we have these skills and that we can use it. It's emotional intelligence. You can look at someone in your team and say, "Are you okay? I'm feeling, I'm sensing that something's going on." And just by having this kind of compassion and capacity to observe someone and be human, that creates such a powerful gift in our business.
Absolutely. And I think it's as you said, the emotional intelligence, that's when we pick up on people's energy. So often people think you kind of put a smile on your face and everything will seem okay. But if people walk into a room, you can feel their energy. Like some people, you immediately kind of feel tense, like everything feels like constricted, or some people are like calm and like confident, and you can pick that up so easily, right? You can't mask that as much as you try. People can sense that. And I think it's the tapping into, that awareness of the energy. I mean, our energy, it radiates meters beyond your body, right? So there's actually like energy waves being transmitted from our heart and our body, and that goes so beautifully to the quote that you have on the screen. We don't see things as they are, we see things as we are. And it just shows, like, it goes back so much to the perception, right? Like it's what you're attracting into your life. It's what your paradigm is. It's the way you see the world and your belief system. That's the lens through which we see our lives. So if you don't like what you're seeing, you don't like what you're getting right now, like, you're the person to change it.
Absolutely. And so it's been just like in a short amount of time, we already know that there are 6 mental faculties that we can really use to our own advantage, and take a look at the ones that you're not using to your advantage. And so as a real quick summary, what we wanted you to know is that the principle that changes everything for your world and the most effective leaders is that thoughts creates results. And we saw it in the beginning. Are you living in a world from the outside in, or are you creating a world from the inside out? Because most people let outside circumstances dictate the way they do things, but exceptional leaders do the opposite. And so staying in control of your thinking is the way to go. This is how you're going to shift. And instead of reacting, you're going to create, and you're going to lead your business with way more intention and way bigger impact. So it's been an amazing session with you, Elise, another time. We got this Google Doc where you can actually scan this, and there are reflective questions and great exercises that we're giving about all these mental faculties. So if you have anything else to add, please do. I always love the conversations we have.
Thank you, Francis. Thank you so much. I've got one final thought that came up as you were speaking, and that is, you can only think one thing at a time. And if we know that our thoughts create our results, we need to be so intentional about what you allow to enter your mind. So control that thinking. Only let good thoughts into your mind that will get you closer to where you want to go. And then that creates your reality. Thank you, Francis. It was amazing to spend time with you, and I'll see you next time.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thanks,
Have a great day,
everyone.
guys.
Take care. Bye.